Chapter 126. Me and Perez walked out to the other side of the banquet hall. After confirming that no one was close enough to hear our conversation, I tapped Perez on the side. Good job, Perez. Perez smiled, his lips curved quietly at my words. Tia, you look in trouble. You're catching up fast. I heard that Rainy will also be entering the academy next year. I wish he could learn as well as you. Rainy? Oh, that little. He's not small anymore. He's bigger than me. He's so excited to see you today. There must be a lot of things he wants to ask about the academy. Speaking of which, Perez stared at me. Why do you look at me like that? Yeah, doesn't seem to have changed. Is that a compliment now or a curse? Perez smiled with his eyes instead of answering. Anyways, thanks to Perez, I was very relieved after a long time ago. Well, that's right. What were you talking about with the Empress? You didn't look so good. Oh, well, she suddenly said that she would find me a marriage partner in front of everyone, so I was a little annoyed. Now that I've paid her back, it's a lot better. What did you say? Perez asked me again, but I didn't think he was asking because he really didn't hear it well. He was looking at the Empress with a cold face. I completely reduced my voice and spoke. It's the Empress trick, maintaining influence in society, connecting the right people, and making connections between the two families. Matchmakers aren't rocks either. But I have to admit that it's obviously effective. But don't worry too much. The princess marriage must have permission from the emperor. She's not gonna reach out to you. I should be careful not to bump into each other for a while. Empress Ravina was not a person to give up easily. Unfortunately, I didn't know what else to say if I run into her at another banquet. I shouldn't go to banquets for a while. Perez? Perez was a little strange. He was much more expressionless than usual, but somehow he's colder. I patted Perez on the shoulder. Don't worry too much. Even the first prince hasn't decided on his marriage yet. She's not going to hook you up with any woman first. Tia. Perez called me and took my hand off his shoulder, but Perez's calloused hands, which held my hand, were full of strength. What's wrong, Perez? If the Empress ever says that again, then tell me. Oh, I was wrong. Perez was worrying about me, not himself. I asked, holding back my laugh. Tell you? How can you help me? One way or another. Perez was sincere. I could tell by looking at his deep, sinking eyes. If I asked him for help, Perez will sincerely try his best to help me. When I felt it, I felt relieved and a little emotional. When did you grow up like this? I momentarily lifted and handheld by Perez. The handheld by Perez and tried to stroke Perez's head like a habit, but I took it back. As a child, I was Perez's childhood friend, and it was well known that Perez contributed greatly to the treatment of my father's illness. However, no matter how close we were, stroking the prince's head was misleading in any ways. By the way, Perez came back to hold my hand again, and his red eyes met mine. Since he's an adult now, I can see a handsome face, even without a smile. The temperature of Perez's hand that was holding mine felt particularly hot. The gum, my calm heart was beating erratically. What's this? Then an angry voice called me. Tia. Grandpa, an angry grandfather approached as if flames were blazing in the snow. I just heard the story. I heard the Empress said something useless to you. Perhaps when he was talking somewhere else, he heard the news from someone and rushed over. I could see it from a strand of my grandfather's hair falling straight down. Don't worry, I didn't answer. I was good at it. Yes, that's how My grandfather gazed at the hand Paris was holding. Second prince, grandfather called Paris in a low voice. What are those hands? I answered quickly before my grandfather misunderstood. He was comforting me a little, Grandpa, comforting. One corner of my grandfather's mouth curled up. Yes, now that you've been comforted, how about letting go of that hand? Paris looked at me once and let go of my hand. There was a slight wrinkle on the forehead, so grandfather and Paris stared at each other without saying anything. Strange. Although my grandfather said to be hated by many people, but I didn't understand why Paris set it blade like that. Was there a conflict between you two without me knowing? But I shouldn't have a bad idea about Lombardi. After such a short but intense staring contest, my grandfather spoke in an unpleasant voice. I have something to share with my granddaughter. Let's go back to the banquet. It was an obvious impolite orders. Of course, this is Lombardi's mansion, so Paris was definitely a guest. Grandfather would be the only one who could speak like that to the prince of the empire. I said to Paris, pointing to where the twins and Craney had disappeared. If you go over there, there'll be twins and Craney. Go ahead and talk to them. Okay. Paris silently bowed to Grandpa and one last time, and walked in the direction I told him. Grandpa looked at Paris with displeasure until the end and led me to a nearby quiet terrace. Terrace. It was a place where we could have a comfortable conversation with a thick and long curtain. After a while, the servant of the mansion brought 2 glasses of wine and a bottle of wine on a tray. Grandpa raised his glass and handed me one and said, Now that you're an adult, you can have a drink with this grandfather. Grandpa smiled deeply as if his feelings were new. I gratefully picked up the glass and smelled it, but the deep smell was unusual, so I casually checked the wine bottle. Wow, it's vintage Mars. It's a wine with a deep flavor and the long afterglow. How much does it cost? Thank you for opening such a nice bottle for my birthday. Seeing the bottle was a habit in my previous life to enjoy drinking. My grandfather, who was watching me, said, You know very well about alcohol, Tia. Oh, damn it. I just became an adult. I saw it in the book, Grandpa. Grandpa's slightly narrowed eyes looked at me suspiciously in response. Yes, if you are, that would be it. Haha. Grandfather said so and slightly bumped his glass into my glass. A clear sound of glass rang the quiet night air on the terrace. I sniffed a sip of wine while looking at my grandfather. As expected, expensive wine. It's a strong drink, but it's so delicious that I want to drink it like this. Looking at me flattering while sipping the wine, my grandfather asked me, I haven't given you a birthday present yet. Is there anything you want? The light from the banquet hall was creating deep light and shade on grandfather's face. If you have anything you want, tell me anything. It's not just saying. Your grandfather is a member of the Lombardi family. He's capable of getting me everything I really want. Therefore, there was a lot of expectation on my grandfather's face that could not be hidden by a deep shadow. What should I say? I had a mischievous thought for a moment. Shall I ask for a box of gold bars? Or should I ask for a small piece of land in Lombardi's estate to live on? Whatever I say, maybe grandfather will listen. But that's not the things I want. I already have enough money, and if it's enough land to settle down, I already have my father's Cheshire estate. There's only one thing I want to have, only Lombardy. Moreover, my grandfather would be disappointed if I asked for small and ordinary things for my birthday. That's what my grandfather's interesting eyes were saying right now. Then I have to live up to that expectation. I'm a good granddaughter after all. I took another sip of wine and asked my grandfather, I'm an adult, so as of today, haven't I, Grandpa? Right now that you're 18, the grandfather's face, nodding his head, was relaxed. Until I say the next thing, then my rights will take effect. Rights? Yes, the right to go beyond the authority of the person in charge and engage in Lombardi's business. Both Shannon and Reese in their youth had the same beginnings by activating the right of the direct lineage into the field of interest and confidence, so to achieve good results and prove one's abilities. That was how Lombardi showed themselves to the world. My grandfather's eyes trembled briefly when he looked at me. I don't need anything else. I want Lombardi, the greatest and most beautiful family in history. So I said to my grandfather with a calm smile, just once, please support me to use my rights, Grandpa. End of chapter 120. Chapter 127. There was a moment of silence on the terrace. Grandfather was looking at me without blinking, and the moment I thought that a smile slowly passed through those eyes. Ha ha ha. Grandfather burst into laughter. That's so ha ha ha. It was a big and cheerful laugh that the wine in his hand flowed out of the glass. I waited quietly until my grandfather's laughter calmed down. That's the gift you choose. You chose, Florentia. Yes, it's an adult birthday present, so I was waiting for something nice, Grandpa. Greedy, Grandfather murmured, rubbing his trimmed beard. It's an authority that anyone in my lineage has. Even if you don't ask it as a birthday present, it's already yours. I shook my head firmly to my grandfather. I've had a more Lombardi-like childhood than anyone since I returned. Therefore, as in my previous life, I'm in a situation where I am criticized for having a mother whose origins are unknown. But that's not all I have to go over. What I want on my birthday is not just to exercise the authority, but my grandfather's support for it. Why do you think you need my support? Of course, I'm fully qualified to exercise my authority. I'm an adult. You're a granddaughter, and I'm pretty smart. My grandfather laughed low, as if he agreed with me. But at the same time, I'm a woman. But I've only become an adult. I'm well aware of the obstacles in my way, Grandpa. I looked straight at my grandfather. If I exercise my authority and touch the business, there will be resistance. That's exactly how Beach will do. Up until now, he has considered only Shannon to be his rival and has been growing his strength outside Lombardy, but he will try to cut the buds for fear that even his young nephew will stand up. Just once, please support me. I don't need any other help. I'm already all set. A strange smile bloomed on my grandfather's face, who was silently listening to me. Okay, I'll do as you say. You want it as a birthday present. I'll have to pay for that. My grandfather's love for me seemed to be overflowing many times more than usual. When are you going to get your birthday present? Soon? Soon? Yes, very soon. I must have gotten my grandfather's promise. Just in time, there's no need to wait any longer. Grandfather smiled at me and said, I'll be looking forward to it. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. One corner of the banquet hall was full of people dressed up. Then Rokus and with music and all locals, with music and all sorts of noises. Gallihan sat quietly on the comfy sofa, lost in thought. The third son of the Lombardi family and the owner of the Gallihan clothing store that spread throughout the empire. He was a man with such a great modifier. It was not that he caught the glances of the nobles who were glancing at this moment. It was the face of an outstanding Gallihan, lost in thought with his long legs folded loosely. Hmm. It was when Gallihan blinked slowly and sighed low. Do you have any concerns? Oh, Caravan. Gallian's expression brightened with the appearance of Caravan, who had been talking softly. It's Lady Florentia's birthday banquet. Mr. Gallian doesn't look good today. Oh, is that so? Mr. Clarivan is right. I should think about it later and enjoy Thea's birthday. Gallian scratched his cheek awkwardly. Looking at the figure, Clarivan shook his head as he sat near Gallian. We should share our concerns rather than procrastinate. If you tell me what's going on, I'll think about it with you. Ah, Gallian conflicted. He's sure there'll be a good solution if we can think with everyone about it together. He didn't doubt it that way, but he couldn't bother him, so who was leading who was busy leading Pallet's business. It's all right, Clarivan. I figure it out on my own. Now, don't you need my help? No way. Galliahan jumped and shook his head. But I'm sure you're busy with Pallet's business and I'm too embarrassed to put a burden on you when Tia owes you one. Don't say that, Clarivan said in a low voice. You are not only the father of Lady Florentia, you were also a partner who once founded the Gallian clothing store. Sir Clarivan, you are already a special person to me, like a family, but if you say that, I'm rather disappointed. Thank you for saying that. Galliano laughed helplessly. Now tell me what you're worried about, Caravan said with ease, raising one foot and crossing his legs. It's not about the Gallian clothing store. The clothing store is stable enough without me. It's just that the Cheshire territory, you mean the southern lands awarded with the National Founding Medal? I know you've been on Cheshire territory a lot lately. Yes, it's a relaxed and peaceful place, as Aunt said, but that reappeared in Gallian's face. It's hard to find is the Cheshire territory, perhaps because I haven't been given the territory for a long time, because of the work of the clothing store I've been doing, perhaps because of my work at Gallian Clothing Store. I have not been paying attention for a long time, even after I was awarded the territory, so the finances in the Cheshire territory are difficult. How much do you want? Oh, of course, the citizens don't get hungry, that's all. Cheshire was not a small territory with a population of tens of thousands. In other words, the lives of tens of thousands of people now depend on Gallihan. And for Gallihan, who has recently begun to look after the Cheshire territory, the burden has come too far. It's okay in the year when the farming is good, they have something to eat. However, in the years of famine, hundreds of people die. It is the result of the entire territory dedicated solely to farming. To be honest, it's not uncommon for the common people to live that much in the empire, Clarivan said coldly. I know that there are deep wrinkles in Galleon's brown. I've seen my father run Lombardy all my life. Although Cheshire doesn't grow as big as Lombardy in the short term, at least there is another way for people of interest to earn a stable return like the citizens of Lombardy. You're greedy. At the words of Terry Van Galleon burst into a sarla. Haha, I'm a little bit like that, but now that you're in charge of the territory, it's a wonderful concern. That thank you. I can't believe I got such a compliment from Sir Clarivan. I think I'm a cold-blooded person who doesn't say a good word. But Galleon smiled awkwardly and avoided answering. Clarivan looked at such Galleon a little unhappy and said, "There's one more asset in the Cheshire territory other than the open plains to farm. What is it? It's a river. Isn't the Cheshire territory located at the bottom of the Great Nocta River? Oh, and a little way down the Nocta River, crossing the Albi River to the eastern Luman territory. That's it." A faint smile hung over Caliban's face. Finally, it's the main point of land transportation between the central and southern regions. There seems to be ample potential as a starting point for a good water trade route to bypass the rugged mountainous terrain to the east. As expected of you, Caravan, at Galleon's cheers, Caravan shrugged briefly. It meant it's nothing. Then Shannon and its twins joined the two. Why did she come here? It's a crowded place, so she's here to show off. What do you mean, Gilio, Mayron? The twins exchanged glances briefly and answered Dalian's question. The Empress, she's speaking a fight with Tia again. To kill Tia's spirit every time she runs into her at the banquet. Why does she keep doing that when she's never been successful? And so did my mother. She didn't attend the banquet because she was bothered by the Empress. Oh, I hate it. Dalian's complexion darkened when he heard the twins talking. His hips were already halfway off the chair. Maybe it's a good time for me to go. She'll be fine, Darivan said, dissuading such Dalian. Don't worry too much. It would be better to worry about the Empress who quarreled with Florentia instead. Darivan thought so and swallowed his laughter. Lady Florentia is a wise and smart person, so she will pass it well. She will. Gallian sat down again, nodding at Claravan's words, but that's also for a while. Gallian jumped out of his seat, unable to resist. I can't, Sir Gallian. I'll have to go check on Tia and come back. Tia is fine. There was one more voice that stopped Gallian. It was Perez, who was deprived of his time with Tia by Lula. Your Highness, Second Prince. Galliahan, who only remembered Paris' childhood, asked doubtfully, "Long time no see, Lord Gallian Lombardi. I don't recognize you." Gallian started in surprise. Paris' change was surprising. I'm on my way back from meeting with Tia. Tia is talking to the Patriarch right now, so you don't have to worry too much. Is that right? Gallian's complexion that hardened my concerns about his daughter has become brighter. Meanwhile, standing next to Gallian, Clarivan opened his eyes wide and could not take his eyes off Paris. He knew that Florentia and Paris were constantly exchanging letters, thanks to this he often heard from Florentia about the second prince, but the news was mostly just who did you get along with or what test did you get first place or something like that. As time passed and watched Florentia grow, Perez in his head was just a child who always left for the academy. But Perez, who appeared 6 years later, was beyond imagination. It's beyond my expectations. Darivan thought so and looked at Perez. Now he's gently talking to Gallihan, but if that person stares at me with hostility, then go. Darivan frowned unconsciously. To the best of his knowledge, Lulak was the only one with his level of charisma. Although he had faced Emperor Javain several times at imperial banquets, he had no such strong influence as Perez. The moment he thought like that, Caravan and Perez's red eyes met. There you are. And in it, Caravan could read some of the fast passing motions. Lord Clarivan Pellet, owner of Pellet Corporation. It was an incomprehensible vigilance mixed with a little curiosity. End of chapter 127. Chapter 128. Why me? There was a question in Clarivan's head. He and the second prince had never even exchanged proper greetings. He was just coming and passing by at a Lombardy mansion or a banquet. Why are you being wary of me? Clarivan greeted Paris politely, hiding his bewildered innermost thoughts. Let me say hello for the first time. Your Highness Second Prince, I'm Clarivan Pellet. But Paris did not answer, just staring at Clarivan. It's not a facial expression or a serious look. It's just a habitual blank expression. The pressure seemed to weigh on Clarivan. It was like saying obey. But Clarivan remained calm, recalling the day he first faced Lulak. The second prince is good, but not as good as Lulak yet. He remembered the fact and tried not to be swayed. At some point, the weight that was bothering Clarivan disappeared like a light. They were testing me. Clarivan was able to realize. It's a pleasure to meet someone who leads the great Ballot Corporation. It's an honor. However, the intentional withdrawal did not soften Perez's attitude. Clarivan could still feel the subtle vigilance, and it sounded an alarm in Clarivan's head. I'll have to ask Bate for the information. Clarivan decided to send a letter as soon as the banquet was over. Can I join you? Perez asked Gallihan politely. Of course. Excuse me, it was just as Perez sat down. Bang! Gilly hit the table in front of him with his palm and clicked his tongue and said, "Oh, why are there so many flies? Did you see that, Mayron?" Ah, the king of the big dumb flies keeps walking around. The twins sitting opposite each other stared at Perez and exchanged words. It was clear that it was aimed at Perez. Gilio, Mayron, Gallian pressed those two. Gallian's strict voice drew attention from the twins, but the attitude was the same. Both. Perez broached in a low voice. I heard that you have received an oath as a knight, by the way. By the way, Mayron asked sharply again. There was no respect or courtesy for the prince, but Perez did not mind. Instead, he threw out a suggestion. Let's have a match sometime. Much, the eyes of the twins who had always been hostile shook. A battle with a powerful person is an invaluable experience for a person who trains a sword. This is because, depending on the person, and sometimes a single battle can bring more than a few years of training. It was a famous story that everyone knew Paris was a genius who had already created aura at the age of 12. In addition, they knew about his spectacular performance at the Academy from Florentia. They hate to admit it, but Perez was far ahead of the twins. Such a confrontation with Perez. Perez struck a decisive blow to two shaky men. I think I can help you two a lot. I'll take a day to deal with you. What do you think? In the end, Maron went over. Gil, you followed. I'll be visiting you as the Knights of Lombardy soon. Perez's lips curled up as they looked at the twins, nodding their heads with resentment. Then Gallian called the servant walking by with wine and picked up a glass. Perez, who was next to him, chose a glass himself. Then he held the glass in his hand and took a sip of the wine. It was a pretty skillful and familiar look. Galliahan, who was looking at Perez with round eyes, asked, "Do you drink?" "Sometimes." "Well, now you're an adult too." "I keep forgetting. I think it's because the young figure standing next to my bed remains in my head." Gallian laughed and asked, "How was the academy? You must have had a hard time far away." Perez, who was taking another sip while looking far away, blinked slowly because he couldn't find words to answer Gallian's questions. For Perez, the academy was a place to go. The Empress kicked him out and headed alone. So what he went through there was something he deserved to overcome. Neither himself nor anyone asked Perez if it was tough. Gallian carefully called Perez, who was somewhere in a daze. Your Royal Highness." "Oh, I'm sorry. It's the first time I've been asked that." "Ah, I guess it was because your Highness was so brave. Did you have fun in your academy life?" Again, it is a difficult question to answer. Paris tilted his head slightly and asked Galliahan again, "What is fun?" "The fun thing is a lot of memories. It makes you smile when you think about it, and you want to remember it longer." "Well," Paris nodded, lost in thought for a moment. "If you think so, I think it was fun." Paris got important things from the academy: knowledge, experience, and people. All of them were indispensable for future progress. At Paris' words, Galliahan laughed, saying it was fortunate. Have you made many friends?" "It is said that a good friend made in school lasts a lifetime." Haha. Eventually, Paris smiled a little. It was a strange laugh mixed with a sigh. Galliahan was surprised and grinned when the prince, who had been expressionless all the time, suddenly burst into a small smile. "Why are you laughing?" "Now I know why." Tia, who couldn't pass by when looking at the person who was having a hard time and was in trouble, was visible in Galliahan. Green eyes that shine affectionately all the time. The corners of the mouth are always smiling. Paris shook his head. "The academy wasn't bad." "Thank God, Prince. Tia worried about you a lot." "Tia?" Perez looked at Gallian in disbelief. "Of course, Perez must make a lot of good friends," she said several times. Perez covered his mouth with a big hand. "She was worried about me. She thought of me." That alone made my heart thump and joy almost pop out of my mouth. It was then. "Everyone's here, right?" He heard a clear and cheerful voice. Perez looked very slowly toward the side of the voice. He already knew who it was without looking back. "Perez, what's wrong with your face? Did something happen?" Tia always looked into Perez's face like clear water, which people couldn't understand at all. But she couldn't find his heart yet. Perez answered briefly, hiding the tremor of his heart and shaking his head. "No, nothing happened." Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. The banquet was scheduled to last until dawn, but having to get busy from tomorrow, I left the banquet before midnight. Paris followed me to take me there. "You don't have to take me there. The Lombardi mansion is big. I come with you to the annex." My house wasn't far from where the banquet was held. Walking down a familiar path, I asked Paris, "When are the friends who graduated from the academy coming?" He said they'd follow you to the capital. "Soon they'll be on their way by now. If they come, introduce me. I'm curious." "Are you curious?" "Are you curious?" "Of course, Paris. The people of your choice. No, friends." If Paris had picked the same people as my previous life on the way to becoming a crown prince, I would just have to give a little help. If not, then I can help him a lot. I kept walking down the street, thinking lightly, and before we knew it, we were in front of the annex. "See you later then." I waved to Paris and then turned around, and as I took a few steps, I forgot to tell Paris and stopped again. "Paris, huh? Good job. Congratulations on your graduation." I forgot the most important thing, but a spirit I am. Paris blinked a couple of times. I leaned surprised and then smiled faintly. "Tia's dad said you were worried about me. That right?" Paris nods his head. "Well, that's what I was worried about because you had to adapt elsewhere. I never worried that you wouldn't make it." "Never?" "Yes, not once." Paris was a brilliant graduate of the academy under even more dire conditions. This time, a much better environment has been given, and cannot fail. "Thank you." "Don't mention it." I waved again and entered the annex. I climbed the quiet hallway and stairs and stood in front of my door. I could see the door slightly open. I was going to rest right away, but I can't. I went inside with a small sigh. The dim measures seemed no different from when I left home for a banquet. But after I lit up the room, I said, removing the rings and earrings from my hand one by one, "I'm turning on the lights. Why are you in the dark room, Bate?" Then Bate, who was sitting in a chair in the corner, lifted himself. "Did you enjoy the banquet?" "You know I'm lazy about banquets." "Haha, it was Lady Florentia's birthday banquet, so I thought it would be a little different. While I was growing up as an adult, Bates' information world was completely grown. Now the information obtained through Caramel Avenue boasts complete reliability. It's a big deal to come to my house at a time like this, isn't it?" I finally took off my necklace and asked, "You told me to find out about the top of Monarch." "Oh, I did," he answered and walked slowly to the window. "Was it just to make sure the lights in my room turned on without any problems?" I could see Perez still standing there. "We've identified the owner of the top of Monarch, as expected, Bait. So who's the one who got our pilot in trouble?" I spoke to Bait and waving at Paris in the distance once again. Paris, who looked up at me for a while, waved the same hand like me and walked back to the banquet hall. Maybe it's because of the bright lights on the road. The thick shadows seemed to be drawn heavily behind Paris as he turned. Bait said to me, who was leaning against the window sill with a gentle night breeze, "The owner of the top of Monarch is Paris Brivacha de Reri, the second prince." End of chapter 120. Chapter 129, Pallet Corporation's office. "What did you just say?" Caravan, who was busy working in the morning, asked again, surprised enough to drop the flag pen. I said it again in a calm voice, as much as I could. "Paris is the owner of Monarch Top." Are you sure? Claravan looked at Wade sitting next to me and asked. Yes, I'm sure. I was surprised too, so I checked it several times before telling you. Oh no, no way. Claravan couldn't speak as he washed his face. I know how you feel. I was quite surprised when I first heard it. I don't know how many times I've asked Wade if he's sure like Claravan did. I said, pouring a glass of water to Claravan, feeling like I was looking at myself. First, have a glass of water and calm down. Yes, while drinking water, Claravan was still dumbfounded. After blinking a few times with a blank face, he muttered as if he had realized that's why he was so wary of me. He's still competing with Pallet in the note. Did that happen? Yes, just before Lady Florentia came from the banquet. Don't worry too much. If Paris was really wary of you, he would have completely hidden his innermost thoughts, to the point where no one would notice. Well, that's true. Clarivan nodded and smiled in vain. I thought he must be an experienced merchant. I feel like I've been stabbed in the back of my head. Oh, you're right. Blade picked up one of the guest chocolates on the table and put it in his mouth. He built it up with a middle-aged merchant named Nolchier, but the real owner is the second prince. Well, it's like me and Terriman. Oh, I was speaking calmly, but I was quite surprised. I've never heard the name Monat Top in my previous life. By the way, his tiny second prince is no ordinary man. I can't believe he made a top with a borrowed name. Oh, of course, not comparable to Lady Florentia. Clarivan, who returned to his usual calm appearance, said, giving a lot of strength to the last word. But at this rate, the first prince is truly no match for the second prince. It was the right opponent from the start. Who cares about the stand? But there's Empress behind him, so it's not an easy fight. Empress Servina is not an easy opponent. I don't think anything else, but I acknowledge the Emperor's political skills so quick to quickly grasp what the other people want as well as their weaknesses. The Empress is very active these days. Bate also agreed with us. Recently, she has been close to Ivan in the north and often called him to the Imperial Palace. I'm sure he has thought about appointing the Crown Prince. It was the Emperor's authority to choose the Crown Prince. However, there was a formal procedure to seek the consent of the imperial nobles. When the Emperor chooses the Crown Prince, the aristocracy must agree to it first. If the majority of the aristocracy agreed, then the consent of the representative families of the East, West, South, North, and Central Empire was needed. The unanimous agreement that the representative family is simply the family with the largest territory in the region. Lumen in the East, Susu in the South, and Janus in the West, Ivan in the North, and finally Lombardy in the center. For now it is, and this procedure has quite a significant legal effect, so he has not been entitled to a fair crown prince as if he did not meet these conditions at the time of his inauguration. Of course, in most cases, nobles follow the emperor's orders. For now, His Highness Second Prince must capture the aristocracy. Since the emperor has decided him to attend the conference, the problem will be solved easily. Caravan was right. In the previous life, aristocracy was not a big problem in Paris' future. The problem is the key is to get the consent of the local representative families, said Clarivan while fixing his glasses. Even if the other families can be persuaded, what happens to Angenis in the West? We need to get unanimous agreement. Bate asked tilting his head, as he's tilting his head. In my previous life, Paris had to face Lombardies and Angenis opposition to tune down Angenis from the west, representative and Lombardi from the central deposed for tax evasion and aiding and abetting treason. Scary bastard. I shivered at the sight of the spiteful Paris in my previous life. Then Caravan looked at me with a little worried eyes. Lady Florentia, it's nothing. Paris and Monarch. How are things going with us? Although the Monarch top is still bothering us, fortunately the purchase of the tree is stable. Violet seems to be working hard. Don't you know Violet's personality, who doesn't give up and hates to disappoint Lady Florentia more than to die? I laughed as if I couldn't help but carry Clarimon's words. Violet is the most diligent and hardworking person I know, but she needs to know how to rest a little bit. We've been collecting trees since last year, so we don't have to make aggressive purchases anymore. Then how can I tell Violet, keep buying tribal trees, but reduce the frequency of competing with the monarch top? I'm afraid they have something to do with the tree. I know what's going to happen in the future, but I want to see what Perez thinks. Then I'll go back to the store. Bate, who greeted me, went away, saying his job was done, and Clarivan and I continued our meeting. Clarivan, who carefully received my instructions, was hesitating for a moment. If you have anything to say, feel free, Clarivan. Oh yeah, that's perhaps a shame to have been caught inside. A slightly blushing Clarivan carefully took his chance. I need permission from Lady Florentia. Permission? Well, its work was left to the discretion of Clarivan, except for the big ones, because he's a lot more capable than me. But is it a job to get permission separately? There was a time when Lord Gallian consulted concerns to me at the birthday banquet. Caravan explained his plan to me in a calm voice. So you're saying that my father is building a port in Cheshire that leads to the eastern seaport, so why don't we invest in it? Yes, of course, it will be the most expensive investment since Pallet was created, and I understand if you don't allow it because it's risky. Mr. Caravan, what? Are you a genius? How could you come up with such an idea? Caravan, who was embarrassed for a moment, spoke to me in a cautious tone. Genius sounds more appropriate to a person like Lady Florentia than to a man like me. No, Mr. Caravan is a genius. I get goosebumps on my arm with a shiver because I know the future. It's as if Caravan can see the big picture I can draw. I'm sure that's why he raised Violet Corporation all by himself in his previous life. Perhaps. Hearts are popping out of my eyes looking at Claravan right now. I can tell by the face of Claravan smiling a little shyly. I said after a short thought, then since we're making investments, let's go wild. Wild? Transfer some of the triba trees that have been cut down and dried up to Cheshire. Are you building a port with that? No, Dad. The Lord of Cheshire will do it. We'll be the boat. We'll build the boat. Oh, boat. The Nocta and the Albi rivers are the largest and widest rivers on the continent. We will make a boat with ano? We will make a boat big enough to match it. Then we can easily move our pallets cargo to the east. Not only that, I and Clarivan started having a meeting excitedly after a long time. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. After the meeting at Pallet, I headed straight to Laurel's house because I was invited to dinner. I was so hungry because of the meeting. I ate a meal and sat around the drawing room with a simple dessert. I wasn't the only guest at today's dinner. Oh my, our Marilyn. Oh, ka. It was Clan Devon, the eldest son from Marilyn's father's sibling, the head of the Devon family, the Lombardi Vassal family, who was kissing his nephew Marilyn in front of me. Clint, Think of every day as cold as Marilyn is still young. They don't play with their father even if they grow up just a little bit. That's because you're so annoying. Clint, who said so, smiled softly with Laurie. Laurie, you laugh now. Watch when the time passes and go. I'm not going to comfort you if you cry then, Flint. He talked a lot more than usual. Probably because he relaxed a bit with a glass of wine he drank with his meal. His weaker drinker than he looks. He's a weaker drinker than he looks. We drank wine together and I was fine. At that time, my eyes and Clang Devon, who were smiling, met. Lady, Clang closed his lower lip as if he had a lot to say. Tell me, Lord. This Clang Devon will not lose to anyone for loyalty to Lombardy. I will. There was a loud bang on the chest. Of course, without Devon Lombardy's transportation business, and many of Lombardy's businesses would be scattered. I laughed and played along. It's not an empty word. In fact, Lombardy Transportation, which Devon is in charge of, is one of the cores of Lombardy's many businesses, including the top. It's Lombardy Transportation that allows branches scattered throughout the empire to communicate with the headquarters. It's Lombardy Transportation that makes sure the top staff reaches its destination, right? Yes, that's right. Klang Devon nodded passionately. But why doesn't anyone appreciate our efforts? Why? Did something happen at the meeting of the Vasil family? I don't know if I can tell the young lady yet. Among the Vasil families, our Devons are often ignored. It was pathetic to see the big Klang Devon's shoulders drooping down. It's all because there's no tangible result. Everyone builds buildings or makes a lot of money on top. I'm not doing anything. The depressed Klang Devon's voice grew smaller and smaller. At best, we must be assisting other families. I can't help it. Something must have happened at the Basil family meeting. It was good for me to have something to say to Clang Devon. I put the glass of wine in my hand on the table. Lord Devon. Clang Devon slowly raised his head at my call. I said, looking at the face, which was really upsetting. You said you didn't want Lombardy transportation in your care to just assist other families. Well, that's already one family's job, but to be honest, yes. Then why don't you change it? Yes? Clang Devon's eyes shake. Would you like to do a business with me that only Devons can do? End of chapter 100. Blink, blink. Thick and large Clang Devon's eyes closed and opened slowly. Clint, who was listening to Clang Devon's conversation with me next to him, was surprised and ardent. Oh, Clang Devon, who had been pouting for a while, suddenly shouted at Flint. Drink, Flint, get me a drink. Wait, brother. Flint, who shouted in a loud voice, quickly brought water in a large glass. Gulp, gulp. I was watching leisurely as Clang Devon, who emptied the glass and wiped the water from his mouth with his sleeve. I'm awake now. Go ahead, lady. Obviously, Clang Devon's usual serious eyes were black. I've always admired the potential of Lombardi transportation, and I've been sad that that potential doesn't shine properly. Thank you. A little embarrassment flashed over Clang Devon's face filled with gratitude. He must be remembered the whining while drinking a little while ago. He must be remembered. Wait, there's nothing to be ashamed of. Everyone gets sad and angry if they don't get the right credit for their hard work. Clang Devon looked at me at my words. Why do you look at me like that? I was wondering when you grew up like this. As I stared at him without a reaction, Clang Devon nodded and said, I'm sorry, excuse me, lady. No, I'm offering business proposals to the Devon family. My age can be a concern. No, you must pay attention. Thank you for your understanding. But one thing I can assure you is that none of the people who use Lombardi's name understands the advantages of Devon's transportation better than I do. Clang Devon nodded silently at my words and asked, as I understand it, you're going to use your authority as the direct lineage of Lombardy. Yes, but I don't intend to push ahead with things that Lord Devon doesn't want just because of my direct lineage. Why are you taking such a cumbersome route? Because I have a lot of ways to develop Lombardy, but I'm not good enough to force someone who doesn't like it. Haha, Clang Devon laughed. It was a smile of tension. Then, may I venture to ask you for an explanation? Clang Devon, who said so, gave Flint a wink. Now, Clang Devon was not Flint's brother, but Devon's household lord. Flint and Laurel took Marilyn out of the drawing room. Now, just me and Clang Devon stayed. As Lord Devon, looking at me with a serious eye, I opened my mouth. It's not a business that requires a lot of change. Rather, it's enough to do with what the Devons have now. No one has thought about it yet. A change of thought. But at the same time, is it something only Lombardy can do? Clang Devon's eyes showed more anticipation. Imagine, I spoke in a low voice. One day, the madam of that wealthy southern estate wanted to change the atmosphere of the mansion ahead of the banquet. A few months later, the old decoration looked a little gloomy. I could see Clang Devon slowly sinking into my story with his head down. She heard that the precious jade in the east is so shiny and pretty when it's lit. How nice it would be to have a jade decoration on that sunny window. Ooh, the madam who thought so picked up a booklet that read Pellet Home and Interior, and as she turns over the booklet with various pictures and explanations, oh my god, it just so happens that the Eastern artisan is selling a large jade vase. What a relief. But how do we order this from the far east and bring it to the southern territories? Besides, there's no Pellet Home and Interior branch around there. And then there was a name that popped into her head. What? What is it? The reliable Lombardy transportation. Oh, we will deliver the items she wants right in front of her house. The big clown Devon's eyes became fist-sized, and he shouted in a loud voice, what an innovative idea! The shipping business that delivers it to the front of the house. It's not just about delivery. The life of the transportation industry is about speed and precision. Isn't it about trust and trust? Right, quick and accurate. Clang Devon clenched his fist. Lombardy Transport is already in charge of the top Lombardy that extends throughout the empire, isn't it? It's just a matter of connecting the top retailers and stores with stores and adding a door-to-door delivery process. Our Lombardy Transportation has already dispatched staff to Lombardy staff branches throughout the empire. The door-to-door delivery procedure requires the hiring of an additional person who knows the geography of the area. As expected, you are tweeted. And as expected, experts are different. As a master of delivery, Clang Devon began to pour out all kinds of professional knowledge like a bot. All I had to do was listen to the knowledge and tell him a few complimentary points. But that alone surprised Kang Devon. I didn't expect to have such a good conversation with who is not an employee of Lombardi Transportation. You were the most knowledgeable person in Lombardi about transportation. Kang Devon was shining so brightly that it was hard to think of him as the same person who was drunk and complaining of his disappointment. Of course, that's not all. We need to find the top-end shops to keep our customers' belongings that are valuable to Lombardi Transportation. But leave it to me, Devon. Young Devon covered his mouth as if we were joking and nodded. I believe that Lombardi Transportation in Devon will fulfill the purpose of this project that I have been picturing in my mind. The purpose? What is it? I replied with a big smile. When someone knocked on my door and said, "Delivery is here," the happiness and excitement of running towards the door. Wow, I'm so happy just imagining it. I think anyone who can afford to pay for it should be able to feel the beating heart pounding. All right. I am Klang Devon clenched fists. This innovative business it needs a new name. Simply saying transportation simply does not mean everything. Then I have something in mind. What is that, Lady Florentia? Although Klang Devon already seemed to agree with anything I said, I looked into Klang Devon's eyes and said, "Why don't we call it delivery with the meaning of delivery to your house?" Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. A big dinner was served at the Emperor's Palace. Today's guest, Ron St. Ivan, was Ivan's eldest and deputy. The kitchen of the Empress Palace was stirred up all day, and the huge dining table was filled with only the food Ronson liked. Seeing it, Ronson bowed his head a couple of times and greeted the people waiting for him. The Empress and the First Prince, "Thank you so much for inviting me," and Astana shook her head silently, and the Empress replied with a big smile. The Deputy Patriarch, Ivan, came to the Imperial City. "Can I just let you go without serving you at the palace?" It was Ronson who had replaced Patriarch Ivan, who was unable to travel between Imperial City and Ivan territory due to his old age. The word Deputy Patriarch was really sweet to his ears. Ronson also greeted a less presence figure who sat quietly on one side. "Patriarch Angenes, I haven't seen you in a long time." "Yes, it's been a while." It was a fact that every Imperial nobleman knew that Frederick Angenes was the puppet of the Empress. The opponent that Ronson should pay attention to today was neither Angenes nor the First Prince, who kept his mouth shut. "Take your seat comfortably." It was Empress Rubini who was in power. Ronson started eating with a polite and courteous smile at the Empress, and by the time the meal was over, Empress Rubini, who had eaten, I'm sorry, who had eaten a lot of food and had a good feeling, cleaned the corners of her mouth with a napkin and talked. Sooner or later, our first prince is going on a hunting trip up north with his friends. He wants to stop by at the Ivans during his journey. "Oh, is he? I hear there is no other place to hunt wolves than Ivan Estate." Astana, who answered as the Empress had said before the dinner, put a glass of wine to his mouth with a sullen face. He was sick and tired of his mother's attitude of holding his hands and doing whatever she wanted, as if he was still a child. "Right, the wolves in the north are quick and big, so they good to hunt. The door to Ivan's estate will always be open to the first prince." "Thank you," the Empress, who was looking at the scene with the light, said to Astana in a heartwarming voice. "The Ivans are a strong and noble family that protects the northern part of our empire. Don't forget that, first prince." "Yes, mother, and the Ivans has a very strong relationship with our Angenes. Am I right, Deputy Patriarch Ivan?" "Of course, Empress. The Western Development Plan, which Angenes has been pushing for recently, has also helped Ronson's position within the Ivan family, while his younger brother, who is 1 year younger than him, was constantly anxious. His contract with Angenes allowed him to take the lead in in the race for succession. While we're here today, I'd like to ask you a favor, Deputy Patriarch Ivan. Now it's time to come." At the sign of the Empress trying to get to the point, Ronsard replied nervously, "Tell me, Empress, we've accelerated the development of the West, but I don't think the amount of wood that Ivan has been sending us will be enough." The Empress was trying to develop the West as as a tourist destination for the upper class, and she needed well-polished roads and luxury houses for it. And Ivan supplies the wood needed to build them at a low price. This was the content of the contract between Ivan and Angenes. The Empress said with a beautiful smile, "So I think we're going to need 4 times as much wood in the future. Of course, the Ivan family can help me with this, right?" "Oh, I'm sorry, Empress. It's beyond Ivan's ability," Ronson said with a stiff face. He didn't mean to hackle. "The tree we've been supplying to the Angenes family is a tree called the Triva. It is a sturdy, durable wood that can withstand moisture and heat without warping, but logging is difficult and it takes a long time to process. Then why don't we use another tree?" At the words of the Empress, Ronson shook his head. "Other wood will not withstand the humid hot days and cold nights of the West. Of course, you may want to ask other families for wood to replace the Triva tree, but their answer will be the same as mine. It was already known by the Empress even before the development began. The natives are not good and the climate is bad. There was a reason why the West remained a barren land until now. Nevertheless, the reason for scarring the Western Development Plan was because of the thorny Second Prince. She tried several times to hire mercenaries to kill while he was out of the academy, but all failed, and the second prince, who returned safely to the capital, was as expected a stumbling block in his son's path. The Western Development Plan was a way to overcome this situation. Then how much can you increase the supply of that private wood? It's hard to be sure, but I think it's twice as good as it is now." There was no chance of that. The Empress clicked her tongue inward, but smiled on her face and said, "Then I'll ask you to do that. I'll trust the Ivan family to do the rest." "Yes, Empress." After dinner, Ronson Ivan left the palace. He doesn't even know how to handle a tree. The Empress looked nervously at the distant Ivan family carriage. "Don't worry too much, Empress. The Ivans aren't the only ones with the tree forest. So you're saying another family can supply as much wood as Ivan, father?" Of course, not as much as the Ivan family, which has the largest land, but if you knock on the doors of the other lands around him, wouldn't there be hope? Not complacent, Empress Rubini pressed her father, who only talked about big things. We have to secure the wood at all costs. Do you understand? Then the Patriarch and Janice replied embarrassedly. Well, let's check the other tops to see if they have any Triva trees. But Empress Rubini was not satisfied. After a moment's thought, she ordered her father, no, that's not enough. After contacting the top that goes directly to the north and transporting the wood. Yes, Empress. Empress Rubini walked to the window and looked down at the darkened palace. The fate of Angenis and the Empress herself depended on this Western development plan. Her hands, which were placed on the window sill elegantly at a glance, were clenched so tightly that their bones turned white. End of chapter 130.